They say the smallest detours can lead us to the biggest turning points. For Samantha Carter, that detour began with a train door sliding shut just seconds too soon. A missed connection that seemed trivial in the moment, but would unravel into something far greater than she could have imagined. Before we step into her story, let me ask you this. If you believe that life setbacks can sometimes be disguised as hidden opportunities, take a moment to like and subscribe, because what happens next will affirm just how true that idea can be. The morning began as they often did for Samantha. Chaotic, breathless, and heavy with the kind of exhaustion that only single parents understand. Her alarm had gone off at 5:15 a.m., its shrill insistence cutting through the cold apartment air. She'd smacked the snooze button once, then twice, and by the third ring she'd realized her daughter Lily was awake already, padding into the kitchen with her hair sticking up in a halo of messy curls. There had been spilled cereal, mismatched socks, a lost hair tie, and a 5-minute tantrum about which shoes were the fastest. By the time Samantha managed to herd Lily out the door with her backpack and lunchbox in tow, the clock on her phone was already taunting her. 7:41 a.m. The train they needed to catch, the one that would deliver Samantha to an interview she desperately needed, departed at 7:50. The streets of Boston were just beginning to stir, coffee carts whistling steam into the air, commuters hustling with their coats clutched against the October chill. Samantha half ran, half dragged Lily along the cracked sidewalk, weaving between business people in wool coats and college students with headphones and slouched backpacks. Her boots thudded against the pavement, her heart pounding with each passing second. She knew what missing this train would mean. Another delay, another reschedule request, another chance for the HR manager to write her off as unreliable. She'd already been turned down 4 times this month, each rejection letter written with polite, impersonal phrasing that stung all the same. Inside the station, the air smelled faintly of old coffee and wet stone, the grand arched ceiling echoing with the shuffle of hurried footsteps. Samantha's chest tightened as she spotted the flashing orange letters on the departure board. Train 204, boarding. She scooped Lily up despite the child's protests and bolted down the platform, her breath forming clouds in the cool air. The sleek silver train stood there like a promise just within reach. But as she lunged forward, the doors hissed and slid shut with mechanical finality. The whistle blew, and in a matter of seconds, the train was moving, slowly at first, then gaining speed until it disappeared beyond the bend. Samantha froze, her arms trembling from Lily's weight, her throat burning with swallowed frustration. For a moment, the noise of the station seemed to fall away, leaving only the echo of her own disappointment. She set Lily down gently, kneeling to adjust the girl's scarf as though busying her hands might hide the tears threatening to rise. "It's okay, sweetheart," she murmured, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "We'll catch the next one." But she knew it wouldn't be that simple. Every delay was a ripple that threatened to pull her further from the life she was trying so hard to rebuild. She sank onto a worn wooden bench nearby, brushing her hair back from her damp forehead. Lily, ever adaptable, began humming to herself and tracing invisible patterns on the tiled floor with her shoe. Samantha tried to steady her breathing, but her mind churned. Rent was due in 9 days. Her babysitter had already warned her that she couldn't keep covering late hours without notice. The interview waiting at the other end of that train ride wasn't just another chance. It was possibly the last thread of hope before everything began to unravel. She pressed the heel of her hand to her temple, fighting the dizziness of despair. It was then, as she leaned back against the bench, that she noticed something peculiar. Just beneath the slat of the seat beside her, folded with surprising neatness, was a piece of paper. At first she thought it was trash, a discarded receipt or flyer. But something about its placement struck her as deliberate. Curious despite herself, she reached down and tugged it free. The paper was thick, almost luxurious, the kind you might find in a stationery shop. Unfolding it, she discovered handwriting, clean, deliberate strokes in dark ink. She read the first line aloud without meaning to. "To the one who finds this, know that missing a step is not the same as losing the path." Samantha blinked, startled by the odd resonance of the words. Her eyes traveled further down the page, absorbing sentences that seemed less like casual scribbles and more like fragments of a confession, or perhaps a message meant for anyone lost enough to need it. I have failed more times than I can count. But I have also learned that failure is nothing more than the soil from which the next attempt must grow. Don't give up. Not yet. The train you think you've missed may not be the one meant to carry you forward. Her pulse quickened as she reached the bottom. The note was signed simply, DM, CEO. For a long moment, Samantha just stared at the initials. Her breath caught somewhere between disbelief and awe. CEO? Of what? Of who? The thought that someone at that level, someone wealthy, powerful, untouchable, had sat in this same station, scribbling words like these, left her unsettled. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was holding something important, though she couldn't yet explain why. Was it real? A marketing gimmick? A prank? Yet the ink smudges on the corner and the hurried loops in the handwriting spoke of authenticity. Someone had written this in a moment of truth. She tucked the note carefully into her bag as Lily tugged on her sleeve, asking for a snack. Even as she pulled out crackers and a juice box, her thoughts were elsewhere, spinning in a new direction. For the first time in weeks, the crushing weight on her chest seemed to shift, just slightly. Maybe it was silly. Maybe it was coincidence. But maybe, just maybe, the words on that page had found her exactly when she needed them most. And as Samantha Carter waited for the next train, unaware that this small scrap of paper would lead her into a story of impossible coincidences and life-altering choices, the station hummed around her with the ordinary movements of strangers, each one unaware that something extraordinary had just begun on that worn wooden bench. When Samantha finally boarded the next train, the note felt like a secret talisman in her bag, radiating a weight that far exceeded its few ounces of paper. She pulled it out once more as Lily pressed her face to the window, entranced by the blur of autumn colors flashing past. Samantha read the lines again, tracing the deliberate strokes of the handwriting with her eyes. The signature, DM, CEO, taunted her curiosity. Surely, it had to be someone important, someone whose initials meant more than coincidence. She tried to brush it aside. After all, she had an interview to survive, bills to pay, and a daughter who needed her steady. But the words clung to her, echoing in her mind like the refrain of a song she couldn't stop humming. By the time the train screeched into Boston South Station, Samantha had decided she couldn't let the mystery go. While Lily clutched her hand and skipped beside her, Samantha's free hand tightened around her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed the words into a search bar, DMCO Boston. A list of results appeared instantly, a cascade of names she didn't recognize, until one stood out. Daniel Moore, CEO of Moore Logistics. She clicked. The headline read, Daniel Moore, from orphan dreamer to billion-dollar innovator. The article included a headshot, sharp jawline, dark eyes, the kind of charisma that magazine profiles love to capture. More importantly, Moore Logistics was headquartered only a mile from the very station where Samantha had found the note. Her chest tightened. Could it really be him? What were the odds that a man like that, someone whose name belonged to business sections and investor calls, would leave something so vulnerable, so handwritten, in a public place? The rest of the day blurred past in a haze. Samantha did her best in the interview, though the weight of sleepless nights and gnawing anxiety pressed down on her every answer. The manager's polite smile was too polite, his notes too sparse, and by the time she left the building, she knew deep down she wouldn't be called back. She pushed the thought aside. Failure had become a familiar companion, and she had no choice but to keep moving. Still, as she walked past the gleaming glass towers downtown, the headquarters of Moore Logistics rose like a beacon in her line of sight. It was massive, sleek, reflecting the late afternoon light in silver streaks across its facade. And she couldn't help but think, he works there. He sat where I sat. He wrote that note. That night, after putting Lily to bed, Samantha sat at her kitchen table with her laptop open and the note laid flat beside it. She stared at the neat loops of the handwriting until she could almost imagine the man behind it, pen in hand, pausing between words as if weighing the truth of his own confessions. Against every instinct, she clicked through Moore Logistics careers page. One position caught her eye, Junior Data Coordinator. The description mentioned organizational skills, attention to detail, and comfort with spreadsheets. It wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and perhaps within her reach. Her resume was a patchwork, part-time retail jobs, a short stint as an assistant at a local firm, and a long gap labeled only by the reality of single motherhood. She almost closed the application window, telling herself she wasn't qualified. But then her eyes drifted back to the note. Don't give up. Not yet. The train you think you've missed may not be the one meant to carry you forward. With a deep breath, she clicked submit. Days turned into a week, and she tried to bury her hope beneath the daily grind of babysitting gigs and grocery store shifts. Then, on a Wednesday morning while she was pouring milk over Lily's cereal, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. Hello, this is Samantha Carter, she answered, her voice cautious. Good morning, Miss Carter, came a warm but professional voice. This is Karen from More Logistics. We reviewed your application for the Junior Data Coordinator role, and we'd like to schedule an interview. Samantha's spoon clattered against the counter. She stammered out a yes, her pulse racing so loudly she could hardly hear the rest of the details. After the call ended, she sat down heavily, staring at the note as though it had suddenly come to life. Coincidence? Fate? She couldn't tell. But one thing was certain. The words she had stumbled upon were pulling her closer and closer to their author. The following Monday, Samantha walked into the soaring lobby of More Logistics, her resume clutched in one hand, Lily's small fingers squeezed in the other. The building radiated order and ambition. Polished marble floors, steel beams arching like cathedral supports, employees in tailored suits moving with brisk efficiency. She felt wildly out of place, her thrift store blazer and scuffed shoes a stark contrast. But Lily beamed at the sight of a massive digital aquarium screen in the lobby wall, pointing excitedly at the glowing fish. As Samantha approached the reception desk, her nerves buzzing, she sensed eyes on her. And when she turned, she caught a glimpse of a man striding across the lobby, his presence commanding, his gaze fixed on her with an intensity that made her chest tighten. She recognized him instantly, the same face from the article, the same name signed at the bottom of the note. Daniel Moore. And though she didn't know it yet, that missed train and that folded scrap of paper had just carried her straight into the center of his story. The interview was supposed to be routine. A panel of managers, a quiet conference room, and Samantha doing her best to sound composed despite her shaking hands. Yet halfway through, the door opened, and the room seemed to shift. Daniel Moore stepped inside. The managers rose slightly in acknowledgement, but his gaze landed directly on Samantha, steady and curious. He asked a few simple questions about her problem-solving style, how she balanced responsibilities, what she thought mattered most in a workplace. Samantha answered honestly, too worn down by life to pretend she was anything other than a woman who had fought her way here against the odds. When the managers thanked her and closed their folders, Daniel lingered. He glanced at her bag, where the corner of a folded note peeked out. You found it, didn't you? He asked quietly once they were alone. Her breath caught. The note at the station? You wrote that. His smile was faint but genuine. I did. I wrote it on a day I wasn't sure if I could keep going myself. I left it there hoping it might help someone else. I never expected it to circle back to me. The silence that followed was heavy but not uncomfortable. Samantha's eyes stung, but not with defeat, with the startling realization that perhaps, for once, the universe hadn't closed a door on her, but opened one. Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded as if reaching a decision. We'll be in touch, he said simply, but the weight of his words felt like more than polite dismissal. 2 weeks later, Samantha returned to the same glass tower, this time as an employee. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and with it came childcare support, health coverage, and the fragile beginning of stability. Each morning, as she dropped Lily off at the Bright Company daycare and walked toward her desk, Samantha carried the note in her bag like a compass. She had missed a train that day, but in doing so, she had found something better, a new path, a new chance, and the proof that sometimes the smallest detours carry us exactly where we're meant to go.